Today's lesson is going to be looking at the placenta. So we're going to be focusing on what the placenta is and its function in the development of the fetus. These are the learning objectives associated with today's lesson. So we need to be able to describe the function of the chorion and the amnion. And we also need to be able to describe key features and functions of the placenta, which are the chorionic villi, the chorion itself, and the structure of the umbilical cord, which is made up of 2 umbilical arteries and 1 umbilical vein. Our key words today reflect the learning objectives very closely, and for your reference, these are the booklet and textbook pages associated with this lesson. Alright, so we're going to start off by looking at what the placenta is. Now the placenta, the word placenta itself actually comes from the Greek for flat cake. So when you actually look at the structure of the placenta, you can see where they derive that from, but possibly not something you want to eat. Alright, so the placenta is an organ, and it's quite a special organ because it's only made by the mother when she's pregnant. So that's very, very unique. It is an exchange organ, so it removes waste from the fetus and supplies nutrients. So round about the end of the embryonic period, which is the first 2 months of pregnancy, all the membranes associated with the fetus have developed, and the outer layer, the chorion, forms the placenta. Now, the placenta is actually a combination of 2 tissues. So it's the fetal tissue and the maternal tissues, and we'll discuss why that's important later. A fully developed and functioning placenta is usually formed by the end of the first trimester or 3rd month of pregnancy. Alright, so if we have a look at this really basic diagram of the uterus, we can see that's the neck of the uterus going down to the cervix. This is the lumen or the space of the uterus itself, and then we have this pale pink layer, which is the endometrial lining. Here we have the umbilical cord, the placenta, which is along here, and you can see these projections coming out of it. And this yellow line on the outside here is the chorion. This bubble, which is a sac containing the fetus, is the amnion, and it will secrete a type of fluid called amniotic fluid, which bathes the fetus. Alright, so here you can see the placenta, also known as the afterbirth. You should note that it's bright red in colour, which suggests that it has lots of oxygen going through the blood vessels, and because it is again red, it lets us know that it's highly vascularized. Okay, so the functions of the placenta, things that we need to really know about, that it's actually an endocrine organ unto itself. So that means that it secretes hormones. So endocrine means hormones. And these hormones are essential for maintaining pregnancy. So we discovered that when a successful pregnancy occurs, the corpus luteum is maintained and it secretes progesterone. And of course that maintains the lining of the endometrium. And when the placenta is functioning and takes over, the placenta secretes a hormone called human chorionic gonadotrophin, which mimics that role. The placenta is also an excretory organ, so we're removing nitrogenous waste. This would normally be done by the kidney, but because the fetus is still gestating, it's done by the placenta. So we remove waste like urea, uric acid, ammonia and creatine, and that is taken out of the fetal blood circulation and directed towards the mother's blood supply, where she will excrete it through her kidneys. The other couple of roles that we need to look at are the immune roles, so it will transport antibodies from the mother's blood to supply the fetus with a level of immune protection. We also get nutrients, which are vitally important for a successful development of the fetus. So nutrients such as glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins and minerals that come from the mother are directed towards the fetus through its blood circulation. and some of those essential nutrients that are demanded in more so in later pregnancy can be stored here as well. And finally, the placenta is a respiratory organ. So again, while the lungs are growing and developing, they're not being used because the fetus is in that sac of amniotic fluid. So the exchange of gases occurs with the mother via the placenta. Alright, so if we look at the development of the placenta, we know that it will start to develop as soon as implantation occurs. So about 5 days, 6 days after conception, the blastocyst, that ball of cells with the inner cell mass, will start to burrow into the wall of the uterus, and the placenta will start to develop then. Now you can see here in this zoomed in area of the placenta, we've got these finger-like projections that are growing out. Kind of looks like a tree in winter. And these projections are called the chorionic villi. Now, these projections grow from the layer of blastocyst cells. So because they come from the blastocyst, which is the fledgling fetus, if you like, this chorionic villi is part of the fetal portion of the placenta. Okay, so this belongs to the fetus, not the mother. Within these projections, there are lots and lots of blood vessels. So if we think about why that is, we have these many projections to create a large surface area to volume ratio. And the reason for that is in these spaces, which I'm pointing at here, that surround the chorionic villi, this is known as the maternal blood pool. So it's the mother's blood. So these two types of blood will be interacting all the time, and this allows for rapid exchange of materials. So the fetus is demanding oxygen and nutrients, and it wants to get rid of carbon dioxide and waste, and if it has a large surface area to do that, then this process will happen rapidly. So here I've got another couple of diagrams just to illustrate what we're talking about. So again, these chorionic villi are the fetal portions of the placenta. This area here is the maternal blood pool, or through the intravillous space. You can see here that this portion of the placenta has maternal arteries that will project out, and this side has the fetus that will be over here somewhere, connected by the umbilical cord, and noticing here that we've got one umbilical vein and two umbilical arteries. This diagram here, again, just another summary to illustrate this process. So this is the chorionic villi, here, here, and here. We have the maternal side of the blood vessels and that maternal blood pool where exchange can occur. Okay, so something that's really important to note is that even though the two portions of the placenta are in extremely close proximity to each other, the fetal and maternal blood never mixes. And that's really important. So they are separated by a layer of cells that will prevent any mixing of blood from happening. Now, we understand from previous lessons that the mother and the fetus can have different blood groups. So if the mother is blood group A and the fetus is blood group B, we know that if those two blood groups come into contact with each other, each has antibodies against the other's antigens, and that will cause agglutination, and that could lead to very serious consequences such as death. So we have to avoid that at all costs, and that is achieved by these layers of cells. Exchange of nutrients is therefore taking place through diffusion and active transport. Now again, as we talked about before, the chorionic villi provide a massive surface area for efficient exchange to take place. So with diffusion, we create this steep concentration gradient, which helps that constant movement or transport of substances. Okay, so again, just another diagram to show you the placenta. I'm showing you this from the reverse of the other images. Remember, in your exam, you will never get the one image of a placenta that you may have seen before, so you should be able to recognize it depending on its orientation. So if we start with the most obvious structure, we've got the chorionic villi, so we know that is from the fetal circulation. Again, provides a large surface area that interacts with the maternal blood pool. Here we are separated by a layer of cells, therefore any movement of substances occurs through modes of transport. This side of the circulation of the placenta is the maternal side, so we have the arteries and veins here. And on the right hand side you can see the umbilical cord, which contains 2 umbilical arteries and 1 umbilical vein, sending nutrients to the fetus and taking waste away. Okay, so now we're going to be looking more closely at the umbilical cord. So this is part of the placenta that attaches to the fetus. Now, contrary to what we've learned before, I've color-coded the arteries in blue. Now, normally we talk about arteries containing oxygen-rich blood. However, it is the reverse within the fetal circulatory system. So the 2 umbilical arteries carry deoxygenated blood, and this blood is moving from the fetus to the placenta. So the rule about arteries taking blood away from the heart is still true. We're moving away from the fetal heart, and we're taking that deoxygenated blood containing waste products back to the mother. On the other side of that, we're looking at the umbilical vein here, which is a large vein. It's only one of them in this case. So veins enter the heart, remember? So this is taking blood to the fetal heart. And because we want that fetus to grow, it's oxygenated blood and nutrients that come from the placenta to the fetus. Okay, and you can see that here. So the umbilical vein is taking nutrients to the fetus, whereas the umbilical arteries, 2 of them, take blood away from the fetus and back to the mother. Now, blood from the mother will enter the placenta through the uterine arteries. And you can see that down here. And this will flow through the blood spaces that occur, and it will leave again through the uterine veins. Okay, so in this diagram again, just showing you those blood vessels and the orientation of them. You can see the uterine arteries and veins here. You can see the chorionic villi, the maternal blood pool, the umbilical vein, and the 2 umbilical arteries. This diagram from your booklet, hopefully you should be able to label and acknowledge where each of these structures are. So we have the amniotic fluid, we have the uterus here, the umbilical cord, which is located here, the chorion, which is the layer that becomes the placenta. We have the umbilical arteries and the vein, and the maternal portion of the placenta, the chorionic villi, and the maternal blood vessels. Okay, so this is a really good video to summarize what we've talked about. I would really recommend that you watch that. Once you've done that, please make sure that you do read those pages in your textbook and complete the booklet notes on pages 25 to 27, and also to consolidate your learning, complete the review questions on page 330 and 313 of your textbook.